How to learn a pretty decent level of Spanish in 1 year or less. Okay, so when I say a pretty decent level of Spanish, of course I'm not talking about a flawless, perfect level of Spanish, but you can develop a pretty good functional level of Spanish in a relatively short amount of time, if you're willing to put a bit of time in each day. Okay, so the first thing that we need to recognize before we jump into any of the methodology is to recognize how much we actually need to learn in order to be able to be functional in a language. Most of us imagine having to learn tens of thousands of new words and grammar structures before even being able to think about opening our mouths to say basic things, but the fact of the matter is that most of the language that we use on a daily basis in day-to-day conversation actually only makes up quite a small percentage of the overall language. So much so that it's generally said that if you can learn the 1,000 most common words or word families in a language, you're generally going to be able to understand around 80% of any given daily conversation. So what does that mean for us? Well, basically it means that if we keep that in mind, we can save ourselves a lot of time and a lot of frustration by focusing on the most important things that are going to give us the most returns. Okay, so how to actually learn a decent level of Spanish in a year or less. So the first thing that we're going to need to do, step one, is to develop a base, to develop a foundation. So when you're learning a new language, obviously you don't know anything about it, so the first thing that you need to do is to just generally get acquainted, accustomed to the language, to the basics. Learn the greetings, learn the most common verbs, learn a little bit about the sentence structure and how those things kind of go together. Now, whilst you can obviously do that just by Googling and searching random things, it's not going to be the most effective or the most efficient way to do so. So the best thing to do when you're starting out with a language is to start with some sort of structured course. So the resource that I'm going to point you towards here is a website called SpanishPod101.com. So this is a free website. You can sign up completely for free. They have a paid option, but you don't need to use the paid option. It's got tons of content on there. Each class is based around these short conversations. You have the native audio, you have translations, you have a list of the new words, new vocabulary that they've introduced, and you even have a kind of overview, a basic breakdown of the grammar and the new things that they've introduced in each class as well. So if you're looking for a good place to get started learning Spanish from zero, that's going to be a great place for you to go. If you're more of an audio course type person, then another resource that you can use is a course called Language Transfer. This is another free course, but this is an audio course. You can find it online or there's an app version as well. Okay, so step one, fairly simple, build a base. Okay, so now on to step two. Step two is to listen to a lot of comprehensible input. So comprehensible input means exactly what the name suggests. It's input, i.e. audio or text or video, that is comprehensible for a language learner. So this is something that we miss a lot when we are learning languages in school, right? We memorize a lot of phrases, we learn a lot of grammar rules and structures, but we never really do any listening. And so as a product, we never learn to understand the language. And so this is the first step in moving towards that goal of improving our understanding of a language. Because of course, if you want to speak a language, you need to be able to understand it. Okay, so with comprehensible input, there's two main paths that we can follow to start engaging with this type of content. The first is to find material that has been specifically and purposefully made comprehensible for language learners. So a good example of this would be Dreaming Spanish, a channel I've mentioned a few times on my channel here before. Dreaming Spanish make videos for all types of levels, but for the beginners, they use a lot of images, a lot of drawings, a lot of animations, repeating, lots of different stuff that allows you to really comprehend and understand what's happening in the videos. Even if you have a very low level or even no understanding of Spanish before, you can understand what's happening because of the visual support. So for this type of content, I'm going to point you in the direction of 3 YouTube channels. The first, of course, is Dreaming Spanish. The second is a channel called Use Your Spanish. This is a channel that has a really strong focus on functional Spanish, on focusing on the things that are most useful to start off with, the things that you're going to actually use if you go to Spain or to a Spanish-speaking country. And the third channel I'm going to recommend you is a channel called Comprehensible Spanish, and this channel has a lot of like short stories and things like that, a little bit more kind of entertaining content that's suitable for beginners and comprehensible for beginners. Of course, there are plenty of other options, places that you can go to find comprehensible input in Spanish, but they're just my 3 favorites, so that's what I'm giving you right now. So the other option when it comes to comprehensible input, this is A slightly more advanced option and is going to be for people that have a little bit more patience or a little bit more ambitious. But the other thing that you can do is to take sort of normal content and make it more comprehensible. So as an example, maybe you watch a Netflix show and then you go through all the subtitles, you search all the words that you don't know, or you find out basically what's going on, and then you watch through the show again. Again, obviously that's a much more intensive method that's not going to be suitable or fun for many people, but it's another option. So step 2, listen to lots of comprehensible input. Okay, so step 3. So step 3 is essentially an extension of step 2. It flows out of step 2, but step 3 is essentially to move on to listening to compelling native content. So this is something that a lot of people are aware of, but a lot of people are hesitant to try and do because it's too hard, basically, which is totally understandable. But the thing to remember here is the goal is not to understand everything. I think we have this assumption that we can't watch things that we don't understand completely, and so if I watch a TV show in another language, for example, and I only understand 60 or 70%, then it's completely pointless. It's not completely pointless, and the bottom line is, if you want to improve your ability, to better improve your ability to comprehend native speakers when they speak naturally and normally, you're going to have to practice listening to native speakers speaking naturally and normally. And so the theory and the foundation is all great, but it's just like learning to swim. Eventually you're going to have to jump into the pool. So there are 2 main tips that I want to give here that are going to make this whole process a little bit easier and a lot less frustrating, hopefully. So the first thing is to focus on things that are interesting, genuinely interesting to you, things that you're actually passionate about. So the key to success in consuming large amounts of native content lies largely in your tolerance for not understanding everything. But if you're forcing yourself to try and watch and try and understand lots of stuff that you, generally speaking, aren't very interested in, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to maintain your focus and your motivation and to want to keep going. Because again, this is all a process of consistency, right? It's a long-term process. So think about things that you like to do in your native language and try and start to convert them into activities in your target language. So there's a couple of really simple examples. Let's say you like cooking. Well, try and look up recipes, try and look up tutorials on YouTube in Spanish. You're trying to learn to edit videos, try and look up tutorials and how-to videos and things on YouTube in Spanish. Find things that are relevant and inspiring and interesting to you, and you're going to find it so much easier to engage with it. You're going to want to understand more of what's happening. Whereas if you sit yourself in front of a kid's TV show or a documentary on the First World War and you're not interested in the First World War, you're not going to be able to maintain that focus and that motivation. So it's really important to find things that are genuinely compelling to you. And again, have to reiterate, the goal here is not to understand everything. So don't worry that you don't pick up absolutely every word, absolutely every phrase. The goal is to expose yourself to the language over large periods of time and expose yourself to natural language. So step 3 is to move on to listening to compelling native content. Okay, and finally on to step 4. So step 4 is to just start speaking. So I've put this step at the end because generally speaking, the better you understand, the better you're going to be able to speak yourself and the more you're going to be able to communicate. But that is not to say that you have to be engaging with native content before you're allowed to start speaking, right? So you're never going to speak perfectly. You're always going to make a few little mistakes, whether it's with the grammar, whether it's with the pronunciation, whether it's the vocabulary or whatever. You're always going to make some little mistakes. So you can't wait until you're ready in the sense of everything that I say is going to be perfect, because then you'll never speak. And in my experience, speaking the language, trying to speak the language, trying to engage in the language, even if you're doing it largely unsuccessfully, not to a very high level, is so rewarding. It's so gratifying to be able to say a couple of things in Spanish and have an actual Spanish speaker recognize what you said and say some stuff back. And maybe you only catch 50% of what they said back, but listen, it's a start. So don't be afraid of not knowing enough words, don't be afraid of not having all the grammar knowledge, don't be afraid of having a gringo accent. You have to start to get better. So in regards to developing your speaking, you'll all likely already know that I'm a big fan of italki, but italki is a paid service. So if you're looking for something free, a free way for you to develop your speaking skills, then I would advise you look towards something like a language exchange application. So you can use an app like HelloTalk or like Tandem. So these are apps where, well, like I say, they're language exchange apps, so they're apps that will introduce you to people that are speaking, so native speakers of Spanish that are trying to learn English, and you can try and connect with these different people, you can try and help each other out, talk about all kinds of different things, and yeah, they'll be able to help you correct your language, correct your errors, sorry, you'll be able to help them correct their errors, and yeah, you both improve your speaking. Okay, so you may have gotten to the end of this video and you might be thinking, okay, so your advice is basically build a base, listen more, and then talk. Yeah, basically. The thing is, I don't think that learning Spanish is a super complicated thing to do, but something being simple doesn't make it easy. So there are a lot of other factors that can make this challenging, things like the amount of free time that you have, the amount of motivation that you have, again, your tolerance for ambiguity, your tolerance for not understanding everything. Those are the things that are going to get in your way, but the actual principles of improving your Spanish, of getting your Spanish to, like we said, a kind of functional level, are pretty simple. The more that you engage with the language, the more that you try and use the language, the more that you expose yourself to the language in natural ways, the more accustomed that you're going to get to that language, the more bits that you're going to grab and understand. And again, with time, with patience, with consistency, that picture becomes clearer and clearer, you get more and more of an understanding, and suddenly you can engage at least a little bit in Spanish. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. Like I said, the resources that I've left in this video are not the only resources available, so if you have other recommendations, please leave me a comment below. If you have any questions about anything specifically, then again, please leave me a comment below. But yeah, I hope this video has been helpful and interesting for you guys. So thank you so much for everyone that's supporting the channel, that watches the videos, that hits the like button, that hits the subscribe button. I really, really appreciate your support. We're coming up towards 500 subscribers now, which is pretty awesome. I mean, it's a small goal, but for me, that's pretty awesome. So yeah, thank you again. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Hasta luego.